There is a $1 billion skyscraper in downtown Los Angeles that was just completely covered in graffiti.
These are the buildings, part of a billion-dollar project in downtown Los Angeles that has sat unfinished since 2019. This is not what a fancy high-rise is supposed to look like.
It's estimated that it would cost city taxpayers more than $1 billion if the city was to take over this site.
These graffiti artists broke into the building just a couple of weeks ago and tagged at least 27 floors. The owners are obviously furious. The neighbors are now mad about having to look at this eyesore, and the city is up in arms as well, saying that all of this paint needs to be removed immediately. Oddly enough though, the graffiti artists feel like they've done everybody a favor by adding some art to the building, since this place has just been sitting here vacant and half built for almost 5 years now. I see both sides, but I have a couple really big questions. The first one, which is, why has this building been sitting abandoned for so long? Two, I want to understand who are the graffiti artists who actually pulled this off? How in the world did they get away with it? And are there going to be any repercussions? Then my last question is, what exactly happens from here? Like, are these buildings ever going to get cleaned up, or is this now just going to turn into some attraction of downtown LA going forward? Before we get into the juicy stuff, we have to look at the backstory on this development, exactly how the skyscraper got abandoned and kind of turned itself into a target. The complex here is called Oceanwide Plaza. It's a residential, hotel, and retail complex with 3 total towers in downtown LA. It's located at 1101 Flower Street, actually right across the street from the Crypto.com arena and the Los Angeles Convention Center. Construction here started way back in 2015, and the original vision was to do a hotel building which would stand 49 stories tall. Then there would be 2 more condo towers on each side that would stand a bit shorter at 40 floors in height. Then the whole bottom section, they'd have like a shopping mall area with 150,000 square feet of retail space. Not a bad plan, and it actually kind of seemed like a solid location for a project like this, but it also seems like the developer kind of got in over their head financially. They started on construction in 2015. They worked on the development for 4 years and spent around $1 billion to get it to the point that we see today. But in 2019, the developer ran out of money. A bunch of contractor liens started to pile up, amounting to around $100 million. And the Oceanside Plaza just kind of got stuck in its tracks because of all the legal drama and all of the workers that were out there left unpaid. Now, I will say it's got to be a bit tricky managing a project of this size. Like, my own projects, they cost maybe around $1 to $2 million to complete, and maybe like a year to a year and a half to finish at the most. At least that's the goal anyway. But I cannot imagine overseeing a build that cost over $1 billion to complete and stretches out 5+ years on the timeline. There's so many moving parts, and I'm sure the holding costs are insane. Anyways, the original developers flopped on this one. The project was foreclosed on in June of 2023 and listed for sale. I couldn't find out how much the list price was back then, but we know the group Oceanwide Holdings, who foreclosed, had a $157 million lien on the place that they needed to get paid off. This story kind of reminds me actually of a more complicated version of exactly what happened at the One in Bel Air. Basically, we have an original developer who spent $1 billion and got the plaza mostly built. Then we have the lender trying to take over and force a sale. Then we still have a bunch of contractors who are trying to get to the front of the line because they want to be paid for all the work that they did here. Long story short, it never sold, so nobody ended up getting paid off. That means that starting in 2019 and still to this day, the towers are just sitting there in downtown LA collecting dust, and this is when those graffiti guys decided to swoop in and make their move. Okay, so if we pull this up on Google Earth, these are the 3 buildings here in the middle that we're talking about today. You've got the huge one here on the left, the 2 smaller ones here on the right. Overall, they look kind of built. I mean, yeah, we've still got some cranes that are up in the air, but otherwise, I would say that these buildings, from this angle anyway, look like they're pretty far along. Like, it looks like we got the balconies built, the glass is in. Hard telling if they're actually topped out or not, I'm not sure, but yeah, from this angle, they don't look all that bad, but let's hop down to street level real quick. Yeah, this is what you see from street level. Like, this is the complex here. It's very obviously under construction and very much an eyesore from the street. You've got all this black tarp that's still up and all these other construction nets that are up here. If we toggle along down the street just a little bit, just to kind of get another perspective, looks like that's the arena over there. Yep, there's the Staples Center. But looking up from this direction, yeah, you still got the cranes in the air. I wonder who's paying for those cranes, right? Going down along this street, it is a shame that people just have to walk by this and drive by this all the time and just see this thing just sitting here looking like this, and it's been this way for 5 years. If I was a local, I think I'd be a little bit annoyed as well. But looking down, I mean, check it out. This whole abandoned construction site situation is exactly why these graffiti guys were able to get in here. Like, there's just this little fence, and you somehow weasel your way through any little piece of this fence, and you're into the building. Once you get in there, there's probably not any security cameras. There's probably no one paying any attention. So you can kind of sneak your way into the building, climb up the stairs, and then boom, you're gonna get yourself access to any one of these balconies all the way up to the top, and that's exactly where they hit this with all that graffiti. I couldn't pinpoint the exact dates that this went down, but it was sometime last month where a handful of graffiti artists entered this property through those holes that we were looking at in the chain link fence. They climbed up flights of stairs carrying buckets of paint, rollers, spray cans, and ladders, and then they just started painting those balconies of these abandoned condo units. There's a bunch of footage online of what happened here. It's honestly unbelievable just to see how much of this building was hit in such a short period of time. One guy who lives across the street from here and happens to also be a graffiti artist himself, he actually appreciated the work, saying that he didn't see it all go down, but to pull this off, they must have used tens of thousands of cans of spray paint. And this was no easy feat. Like, these dudes were literally risking their lives to pull this off. Check out these photos from the New York Post. This guy was walking along the ledge of the 50th floor in a rainstorm just to get his graffiti up on the side of this building. And I know it's blurry because of the rain and everything, but this shot just shows how crazy it looks when you're actually standing up there. No railings, no safety gear. This was sketch. Apparently there was a security team who was hired to keep an eye on this building, but they were recently fired, so the graffiti guys really did come in at a perfect time. Reports say that around a dozen people for sure were confirmed to have been involved here, although if you look at the amount of work that they did, I wouldn't be surprised if there were way more than that. And the vandals have no remorse here. In fact, they're actually pretty proud of their work, and one of their objectives was actually to get as high as possible on the building so that they could get their artwork as visible and noticeable as possible. I guess they call what happened here a bombing, which they look at as more than a stunt or a crime, because in this graffiti culture, like I said, the goal is to get your art as visible as possible. So anybody who got their graffiti on this tower before this story gained national attention is considering this a historic moment.
Y'all up there, you feel me? If you're from LA and you're not up there, you're not from LA and you're not a Tiger.
You gotta go up there to get your name up. You gotta make history. This is history right here.
As of the last report, at least 4 of these guys have been arrested, but at this point, I highly doubt that anybody else will be found. Like I said at the start of the video, the public reaction to all of this has been very mixed. The graffiti guys themselves look at what they've done as a work of art, and they're proud of what they did. Other activists say that this is a great demonstration because in a city like LA, where the homeless problem is off the charts, there should not be skyscrapers just sitting empty. Then there's the LAPD, who made a comment on X saying that they met with property management and they're making an effort to better secure this property, and they're adding additional security measures to ensure the tagging doesn't continue. The big debate here is whether or not what happened to these buildings would be considered art or vandalism, and I understand that there's varying perspectives on this matter. We're all entitled to our opinions, but I don't care what way you slice it, guys. By definition, what happened here was a flat-out crime. Vandalism is an act involving deliberate destruction or damage to public or private property, and trespassing is defined as entering owner's land or property without permission. Every single one of these guys who broke into this building and spray painted it are guilty of both trespassing and vandalism. That's the reality. The challenge now, though, is figuring out who's gonna pay to clean this whole situation up, I read that the developer Oceanwide Holdings was demanded to secure the building and take down the graffiti immediately. But remember, those developers are kind of in a pickle financially, so it's hard telling if they even have the budget to remediate this problem. One potential option that I read about is that the city could actually take this property back from the developer, probably through like an eminent domain process, and then they could finish this project on their own. But the issue with that is that they're estimating that this project would cost as much as $1 billion to finish. So if the city takes over and coughs up the $1 billion to finish this job, guess who's really paying the $1 billion to finish that job? The taxpayers. I'm guessing within the next couple of months, they're going to get this building cleaned up. They're going to have security here around the clock, and a lot of people are going to be talking about exactly how to get this complex finished once and for all. At the end of the day, it definitely got worldwide attention and sent a message, which is probably what these graffiti artists wanted. It seems like everybody out there wants to blame the developers in this situation, and I get it. It's kind of easy to blame a bunch of billionaires who built some skyscrapers and then just abandon them. But listen, guys, developing a small plot of land in downtown LA is a very complicated matter. And my opinion is that we shouldn't be penalizing the developers by vandalizing their property just because they got themselves stuck in a precarious financial situation. I will say that even though I think what happened here was wrong and definitely illegal, you got to admit it's pretty impressive what these guys were able to pull off in such a short window of time. That's a wrap for today's episode. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit subscribe down below before you go so you catch the next crazy story that I cover. I'll see you next time.